David Rodriguez never thought his life would change when he walked into the meeting room. That Tuesday morning, he was just another scientist working at Luna Station, the big space base orbiting around the moon. His job was simple: help alien visitors understand human culture and help humans understand theirs. Nothing too exciting, just lots of paperwork and boring meetings. But today was different. Today, the first alien ambassador was coming to meet with Earth's government. David had been chosen to be her guide during her stay. He was nervous, excited, and a little scared all at the same time. The doors opened with a soft whoosh sound, and she walked in. David's breath caught in his throat. She was tall, much taller than any human he'd ever seen. Her skin seemed to glow with a soft silver light, like moonlight on water. Her eyes were the most amazing thing. They changed colors as she moved, shifting from blue to green to purple. "I am Lyra Velter," she said, her voice melodic and strange. "I am the cultural ambassador from the Etherian Confederation." David stood up quickly, almost knocking over his chair. "I'm David Rodriguez. I'll be your cultural liaison during your visit." He held out his hand, then realized she might not understand the gesture. But Lyra smiled. At least, he thought it was a smile. Her lips curved upward in a way that seemed familiar yet foreign. She reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm and sent a strange tingling sensation up his arm. "I have studied your greeting customs," she said. "I find them interesting. On my world, we share thoughts instead of touching hands." David's eyes widened. "You can read minds?" "Not exactly," Lyra explained, sitting down gracefully. "We share emotions and basic thoughts with those we trust. It creates harmony among our people." For the next few hours, David showed Lyra around Luna Station. He explained how humans lived and worked in space, how they grew food in artificial gardens, and how they entertained themselves during long missions. Lyra asked questions about everything: why humans laughed, why they cried, why they needed so much privacy. On Ethereal Prime, we rarely hide our feelings. She explained as they walked through the station's recreation area. When someone is sad, we all feel it. When someone is happy, we share that joy. But humans, you keep everything inside. How do you not feel lonely? David thought about this. I guess we do feel lonely sometimes, but we also value our independence. We like being able to have private thoughts and feelings. Lyra's eyes shifted to a warm gold color. That is fascinating. On my world, privacy is rare. But perhaps there is beauty in keeping some things just for yourself. Over the next few days, David and Lyra spent more time together. He showed her human art, music, and literature. She was especially interested in love stories, something that was apparently very different on her world. "Your people write about love as if it is a choice," she said one evening as they sat in the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. "For Etherians, bonding is more instinctive. We feel connections through our minds." "What's it like?" David asked, feeling someone else's emotions. Lyra was quiet for a moment. "It is beautiful and overwhelming. But also, sometimes I wonder what it would be like to feel something that is completely my own." David found himself looking forward to these conversations. Lyra was unlike anyone he'd ever met. She was curious about everything, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in understanding human nature. And there was something else, a connection he couldn't quite explain. He noticed that her eyes turned that warm gold color whenever they talked. He found himself thinking about her during his breaks, wondering what she was doing, what questions she might ask next. On the 5th day of her visit, something unexpected happened. They were in the station's library, looking at books about Earth's history, when Lyra suddenly grabbed his arm. "David," she said urgently, "I need to tell you something. I can sense your emotions." He looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Etherians can only sense the emotions of other Etherians. But with you, I can feel when you're happy, when you're nervous, when you're—" She paused, her eyes shifting to a deep purple. "When you're interested in me." David felt his face get hot. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to know," Lyra said quickly. Do not apologize. It is remarkable. I have never experienced anything like this with someone from another species. It should not be possible. They spent the rest of the day trying to understand what was happening. Lyra explained that some Etherians had stronger psychic abilities than others, and that she was considered particularly sensitive, but connecting with a human was unheard of. What does this mean? David asked. I do not know, Lyra admitted. But I think you are special, David Rodriguez, more special than either of us realized. As the days passed, their connection grew stronger. They would sit together in comfortable silence, and David would feel waves of calm and contentment washing over him. When he was excited about something, Lyra would smile before he even spoke. Other station personnel began to notice their unusual friendship. Some were curious. Others seemed worried. The idea of a human and an alien forming such a close bond was unprecedented. Dr. Sarah Chen, the station's chief psychologist, pulled David aside one day. Be careful, she warned. We don't fully understand Etherian psychology. This connection you think you have, it might not be what you think it is. But David couldn't shake the feeling that what he and Lyra shared was real. More real than anything he'd experienced in his 30 years of life. On Lyra's final night at Luna Station, she asked him to meet her in the observation deck after his shift. When he arrived, she was standing by the large window, looking out at the stars. Her skin was glowing more brightly than usual, and her eyes were that warm gold color he'd grown to love. David, she said without turning around, I have something to ask you. He walked over to stand beside her. What is it? She turned to face him, and he could see something like nervousness in her expression. My diplomatic mission is ending, and I must return to Ethereal Prime. But I do not want our connection to end. David felt his heart skip a beat. What are you saying? I am saying that I would like to invite you to visit my world as a cultural exchange participant. Of course, my people would benefit from learning about human perspectives directly. She paused, her eyes flickering, and I would very much like to show you where I come from. David stared at her, hardly believing what he was hearing. A trip to an alien world. It was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. The journey would take several months, Lyra continued, and once there, you would be the first human to ever set foot on Ethereal Prime. It would be significant. Significant how? It would mean that our connection is not just personal curiosity. It would mean that our species might be ready for deeper understanding. It would mean. She looked directly into his eyes. It would mean that I care about you enough to risk everything. David felt that familiar tingling sensation, but stronger now, through their mysterious connection. He could sense her emotions, hope, fear, excitement, and something deeper. Something that felt like love, but different from anything he'd experienced. When will we leave? He asked. Lyra's eyes brightened to a brilliant gold. Tomorrow. If you are willing. My ship is prepared for the journey. David looked out at the stars, thinking about his life on Luna Station, his job, his friends, his routine. Then he looked at Lyra, this amazing being who had appeared in his life and changed everything. Yes, he said simply, I'll come with you. Lyra's glow intensified, and David felt a wave of pure joy wash over him. In that moment, he realized that his life was about to become something extraordinary. He was about to embark on the greatest adventure any human had ever taken. Tomorrow, he would leave everything he knew behind and travel to an alien world. And somehow, that felt like the most natural thing in the universe. David had never seen anything like the Etherian spaceship. It didn't look like the metal rockets humans used. Instead, it seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light as they walked through the entrance. David felt like he was stepping inside a giant seashell. This is the Stellar Harmony, Lyra explained, her voice echoing softly in the curved corridors. She has been my family's ship for over 200 years. 200 years? David asked, running his hand along the smooth wall. It felt warm, almost like touching skin. Etherian ships are grown, not built, Lyra said with a smile. They continue to develop and change throughout their lives. This ship has traveled to dozens of worlds and carried thousands of my people safely through space. The corridors were filled with a gentle, shifting light that seemed to respond to their presence. As they walked, David noticed that the walls would brighten slightly where they stepped, creating a path of light behind them. The ship can sense our emotions, Lyra explained when she saw David's amazed expression. When we are happy, she glows brighter. When we are sad, she dims to give us comfort. Right now, she is excited because you are here. She has never carried a human before. David felt a flutter of nervousness. Are there other Ethereans on board? Yes, Lyra said, her tone becoming more serious. There are 12 others. Some are curious about you, but others are not sure about bringing a human to our homeworld. Over the next few days, David began to understand what she meant. The other Ethereans were polite but distant. They would nod when they passed him in the corridors, but they rarely spoke. David could feel their eyes on him during meals, studying his every movement. One Etherean named Kale seemed particularly unfriendly. He was tall and thin with dark purple skin that rarely showed any light. Whenever David entered a room, Kale would leave. When David tried to greet him, Kale would look right through him as if he wasn't there. Why doesn't he like me? David asked Lyra one evening as they sat in what she called the meditation chamber. The room was filled with floating crystals that hummed softly and cast rainbow patterns on the walls. Lyra sighed, her skin dimming slightly. Kale believes that humans are too different from us. He thinks that close contact with your species could be dangerous for our people. Dangerous how? Your emotions are so much stronger than ours, Lyra explained. When I connect with you, I feel things I have never felt before. Joy so intense. It almost hurts, curiosity that burns like fire. Kale fears that such powerful emotions could overwhelm our minds. David felt a pang of guilt. Maybe he's right. Maybe I shouldn't be here. No, Lyra said firmly, her skin brightening again. You are here because our connection is special. Because it proves that our species can understand each other in ways we never imagined. As the weeks passed, David began to learn more about Etherean culture. Lyra taught him their meditation techniques, which helped him control his emotions, and made their psychic connection clearer. She showed him how to read the ship's mood by watching the patterns of light in the walls. Your people build machines to serve you, Lyra explained as they watched the ship's bioluminescent systems respond to the crew's activities. We grow companions that share our lives. This ship is not just transportation. She is family. David found this fascinating. On Earth, humans often felt alone in the universe. But Ethereans seem to be connected to everything around them. Their ships, their buildings, even their plants and animals. Don't you ever want to be alone? David asked one day. Lyra tilted her head, considering the question. Sometimes. I think I do, especially since meeting you. Your thoughts are so private, so completely your own. There is something beautiful about that. Their daily conversations became the highlight of David's journey. Lyra would share stories about her childhood on Ethereal Prime, describing crystal cities that grew from the ground like flowers and oceans that glow with bioluminescent life. In return, David told her about Earth, about rain and snow, about forests and mountains, about the simple pleasure of watching a sunset. Your world sounds so wild, Lyra said, her eyes shifting to a fascinated green. So unpredictable. Our world is more harmonious. Everything works together in perfect balance. That sounds peaceful, David said. It is, Lyra agreed. But sometimes I wonder if we have lost something in our search for harmony. Your emotions, your individuality, your capacity for surprise, these things are gifts that we have forgotten how to value. About halfway through the journey, something unexpected happened. David was in his quarters, trying to sleep, when he suddenly felt a wave of intense sadness wash over him. It was so strong that he sat up in bed. Gasping, he realized the emotion wasn't his own. It was coming from Lyra. Without thinking, he got up and went to find her. He found her in the observation deck, standing by the large window that looked out into deep space. Her skin was dim, almost gray, and her shoulders were shaking. Lyra, he said softly. What's wrong? She turned to him, and he saw that her eyes were wet with tears. "I'm scared, David, scared of what will happen when we reach my world." "Why?" "Because what we have, this connection, it is not normal. My people will not understand it. They will think I have been contaminated by human contact. They will want to separate us." David felt his heart clench. "Will you let them?" "I do not know," Lyra whispered. "I have never defied my people before, but I have never felt anything like what I feel for you, without thinking." David reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, he felt their psychic connection flare to life. Suddenly, he could sense everything she was feeling, her fear, her hope, her deep affection for him, and something else. Something that felt like love, but deeper and more complex than anything he had experienced. "We'll figure it out," he said, squeezing her hand gently. Together, Lyra's skin began to glow brighter, and David felt her emotions shift from fear to determination. "You are right. We will face whatever comes. But first, I need to prepare you for what you will see over the next few weeks." Lyra taught David everything she could about Etherian society. She explained their complex social hierarchies, their telepathic communication methods, and their deep respect for mental harmony. She warned him that many of her people would find his presence disturbing. "They will test you," she said. "They will try to understand how a human can connect with an Etherian. Some will be curious, but others will be hostile." "What about your family?" David asked. Lyra's expression grew troubled. "My family is old and traditional. They believe strongly in maintaining the purity of our telepathic abilities. They will not approve of our connection." Despite these warnings, David found himself growing more excited as they approached Ethereal Prime. Through their psychic link, Lyra shared glimpses of her world, cities that looked like they were made of living light, gardens where the plants sang in harmony, and people who moved with an otherworldly grace. On the final night of their journey, David couldn't sleep. He stood in the observation deck, watching as a blue-green planet grew larger in the distance. 3 moons orbited around it, casting shifting patterns of light across its surface. Lyra joined him, her skin glowing with nervous energy. "That is my home," she said softly. "Tomorrow, you will be the first human to set foot on Ethereal Prime. Are you ready for this?" David asked. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shifting through a rainbow of colors. "I'm ready to show you my world. I am ready to prove that our connection is not something to be feared, but something to be celebrated." David felt a surge of emotion, excitement, nervousness, and something else. Through their link, he realized that Lyra felt it too. It was love, pure and simple, but unlike anything either of their species had experienced before. "Whatever happens," David said, "I'm glad I came." Lyra's glow intensified, and the ship around them seemed to hum with approval. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had each other and the endless stars as witnesses to their extraordinary bond. The next morning, David woke to find that they were entering Ethereal Prime's atmosphere. Through the ship's transparent walls, he could see the crystal cities Lyra had described, gleaming like jewels in the alien sunlight. His adventure was about to begin. David's first step onto Ethereal Prime took his breath away. The ground beneath his feet wasn't dirt or stone, but something that looked like polished crystal. It was warm and seemed to pulse with a gentle light that matched his heartbeat. Above him, 3 moons hung in a sky that shifted between purple and gold. "Welcome to my homeworld," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride and nervousness. Her skin was glowing brighter than David had ever seen it, responding to being back in her natural environment. The landing platform was surrounded by the most beautiful buildings David had ever imagined. They rose from the ground like enormous flowers made of living crystal, their surfaces shifting through every color of the rainbow. The architecture seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting slowly as if the entire city were alive. "How is this possible?" David whispered, staring up at the towering structures. "We do not build our cities," Lyra explained. "We grow them. Every building is a living organism that responds to our needs and emotions. When we are happy, they bloom with light. When we need rest, they provide comfort." As they walked through the city streets, David noticed that the crystal pathways lit up under their feet, creating a trail of soft blue light. Other Ethereans moved gracefully around them, their tall forms gliding rather than walking. Their skin glowed in various shades, and David realized he was seeing their emotions made visible. But something was wrong. As they passed, the other Ethereans would stop and stare at David. Their glowing skin would dim or shift to darker colors. Some would back away, while others seemed frozen in place. David could feel their eyes following him, and the sensation made him uncomfortable. "They have never seen a human before," Lyra said quietly. Noticing his discomfort, "You are different to them. Your emotions are so strong that they can sense them even without direct contact." They arrived at what Lyra called the Velter family compound. It was a collection of crystal spires that twisted elegantly into the sky, connected by bridges of living light. Gardens surrounded the buildings, filled with plants that seemed to sing softly in the breeze. "My family has lived here for over 1,000 years," Lyra said as they approached the main entrance. "Each generation has added to the structure, and it has grown to accommodate our needs." The entrance doors were made of what looked like flowing water, but solid to the touch. They parted as Lyra approached, recognizing her presence inside. The walls pulsed with warm, welcoming light, but David noticed that the glow seemed to flicker when he entered. "The house is confused," Lyra explained with a nervous smile. "It has never had a human guest before." Two figures emerged from the inner chambers. David knew immediately that these were Lyra's parents. They were tall and elegant, their skin a deep blue that sparkled with silver highlights. The male's presence felt strong and authoritative, while the female radiated a calm wisdom that reminded David of still water. "Mother, father," Lyra said, her voice formal. "I present David Rodriguez, cultural liaison from Earth and my honored guest." The two Ethereans studied David with intense curiosity. The male stepped forward first, his skin shifting to a neutral gray color. "I'm Elder Velter," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I welcome you to our home, though I must confess, your presence here is unprecedented." The female approached more cautiously. "I am Harmony Keeper Lyra. I have studied your species through our communications, but to see a human in person is quite extraordinary." David felt their telepathic abilities probing at the edges of his mind, not intrusively, but with the same curiosity a person might show when meeting an unusual animal. It was uncomfortable, but not painful. "Thank you for welcoming me," David said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your world is more beautiful than I ever imagined." Elder Velter's skin flickered with what David was beginning to recognize as surprise. "You can sense our emotional states only through my connection with Lyra," David explained. "She has taught me to understand some of your ways." The two parents exchanged a look that needed no words. David could feel their concern, even without telepathy. They were worried about their daughter's unusual relationship with an alien. Over the next few days, David was given a tour of Ethereal Prime's wonders. Lyra showed him the Resonance Gardens, where Ethereans meditated and renewed their psychic connections. The plants there actually responded to thoughts and emotions, blooming and changing colors based on the mental states of those nearby. "This is where I learned to control my abilities." As a child, Lyra explained as they walked through paths lined with singing flowers. "Every young Etherean comes here to understand how their mind connects with the world around them." David was fascinated by everything he saw. The Ethereans had libraries made of living memory crystals that could share knowledge directly into a person's mind. They had art galleries where the sculptures changed based on the viewer's emotional response. They had theaters where the performers shared not just words and movement, but actual feelings and experiences. But despite the wonders, David began to notice that his presence was causing problems. Everywhere they went, other Ethereans would stop their activities to stare at him. Their usual harmonious interactions seemed disrupted when he was nearby. The situation came to a head during a formal dinner with several important Etherean families. The dining hall was a beautiful crystal chamber where the walls displayed flowing patterns of light that normally reflected the peaceful thoughts of the diners. But tonight, the patterns were chaotic. David's human emotions, his excitement, his nervousness, His deep feelings for Lyra were interfering with the Etherean's usual mental harmony. The light patterns flickered and jumped, creating a visual representation of the disturbance his presence was causing. A young Etherean named Kale, who David recognized from the spaceship, stood up suddenly. His skin was dark with anger, and his voice carried across the chamber. "Why do we permit this disruption?" he demanded, pointing at David. "This human is a void in our harmony. His crude emotions pollute our sacred spaces." The room fell silent. David felt every eye in the chamber turned toward him. He could sense waves of agreement from some of the gathered Ethereans, while others seemed uncertain. "His thoughts are so loud," complained an elderly Etherean woman. "Even now, I can feel his fear and confusion. It is disturbing. He does not belong here," Kale continued, his anger growing. "Humans are primitive beings driven by base instincts. They have no understanding of true mental harmony." David felt his face burn with embarrassment and anger. He started to stand, ready to defend himself, but Lyra was faster. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Her skin blazed with brilliant light, brighter than David had ever seen it. "You speak of harmony, but where is the harmony in condemning someone for being different?" The room erupted in telepathic chatter that David couldn't hear, but could feel as pressure in his mind. Lyra's family looked shocked. Her father's skin had gone completely gray, while her mother's flickered between blue and purple. "David's emotions may be different from ours," Lyra continued, "but they are not wrong. Through our connection, I have learned that there is beauty in feeling things deeply and experiencing joy and sorrow as individual experiences rather than shared ones." "You have been contaminated," Kale accused. "Your mind has been poisoned by contact with this alien." "No," Lyra said firmly, "my mind has been opened. I have learned that harmony does not require sameness. True harmony comes from understanding and accepting differences." The argument continued for what felt like hours. David sat in uncomfortable silence, feeling like an unwelcome intruder in a family dispute. Finally, Elder Velter stood and raised his hand for silence. "This discussion will not be resolved tonight," he said solemnly. "We will continue this conversation tomorrow, when emotions have cooled and wisdom can prevail." As the gathering dispersed, David felt more alone than he had since leaving Earth. The other Ethereans avoided looking at him as they left, and he could sense their discomfort and disapproval. Lyra approached him, her skin dim with exhaustion. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I knew there would be resistance, but I did not expect it to be so intense." "Maybe they're right," David said, his voice heavy with doubt. "Maybe I don't belong here." "Do not say that," Lyra said, taking his hand, the moment their skin touched. David felt her emotions flow into him, determination, love, and unwavering support. "You belong wherever we choose to be together." That night, David stood on the balcony of his guest quarters, looking out at the 3 moons hanging in the alien sky. The city below pulsed with gentle light, beautiful and peaceful. But he couldn't shake the feeling that his presence was like a stone thrown into still water, creating ripples that disturbed the natural order. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. He could only hope that love would be enough to overcome the fear and prejudice that seemed to surround their unusual relationship. David couldn't sleep after the confrontation at dinner. He stood on his balcony, watching the 3 moons cast their strange light across the crystal city. Everything felt wrong. Maybe Kale was right. Maybe he didn't belong here. Maybe his presence was causing more harm than good. A soft knock on his door interrupted his troubled thoughts. When he opened it, Lyra stood there, her skin glowing with a warm, gentle light. She looked nervous but determined. "May I come in?" she asked quietly. David stepped aside, and she entered his quarters. The room had been grown specifically for him, the Etherean equivalent of a guest's bedroom. The walls were softer than the rest of the house, designed to be less overwhelming for human senses. "I have been thinking about what happened tonight," Lyra said, sitting on the edge of the crystal bed. "About what Kale said, about what my people believe." "Maybe he's right," David said, joining her. "Maybe I'm causing too much trouble for your family, for your people." Lyra's skin flared brighter. "No, What happened tonight only proves how important our connection is. My people have become too comfortable in their harmony. They have forgotten that growth comes from challenge, from experiencing new things. She stood up and walked to the center of the room. David watched as she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Suddenly, the walls around them began to change. The soft crystal became more transparent, and patterns of light began flowing through it like water. "There is something I need to show you," Lyra said, "something I have never shared with anyone." The light patterns in the walls began to form. Shapes, memories. David realized he was seeing into Lyra's mind, watching her past like a movie playing on crystal screens. He saw her as a child, struggling to control her unusually strong telepathic abilities. While other young Etherians shared gentle thoughts and emotions, Lyra's mental voice was too loud, too intense. She often had to practice alone because her presence overwhelmed her classmates. "I was different too," Lyra said softly, her eyes still closed. "I never fit perfectly into our harmony. My abilities were too strong, my emotions too intense. I learned to hide parts of myself to make others comfortable." The memories shifted, showing Lyra as a young adult working hard to become a cultural ambassador. David saw her studying other species, learning about different ways of thinking and feeling. She was searching for something, a place where her intensity would be understood rather than feared. "When I met you," Lyra continued, "I finally found someone who could match my emotional strength. Someone who didn't ask me to be smaller or quieter. For the first time in my life, I could be completely myself." The memory display faded, and Lyra opened her eyes. They were bright with unshed tears, and her skin pulsed with a deep, sincere light. "That is why I want to ask you something important," she said. "Something that will change both of our lives forever." David felt his heart racing. "What is it?" Lyra walked to a cabinet made of singing crystal and withdrew a small, glowing object. It looked like a gem, but it pulsed with its own inner light and seemed to respond to her touch. "This is a resonance crystal," she explained, holding it carefully in her palms. "It is one of the rarest objects on our world. When two beings share it, their minds become permanently connected." David stared at the crystal, fascinated and frightened. "What do you mean, permanently?" "I mean that we would always be able to sense each other's thoughts and emotions. No matter how far apart we are, we would share not just moments of connection, but our entire lives." Lyra's voice grew softer. "But once the bond is formed, it cannot be broken. And for you, accepting it would mean that your human consciousness would be forever changed." The implications hit David like a wave. "Change how?" "You would gain some of our telepathic abilities, but you would also lose some of your human privacy. Your thoughts would always be partially open to me, and mine to you. You would see the world differently, feel emotions more intensely." Lyra looked directly into his eyes. "You would no longer be fully human." David felt dizzy. This was beyond anything he had imagined when he agreed to visit her world. "And if I say no?" "Then you return to Earth, and we try to maintain our connection across the vastness of space. But it would fade over time, eventually. We would become just a memory to each other." The crystal in Lyra's hands pulsed brighter, as if responding to the emotional intensity of their conversation. David could feel its power even from across the room, a warm, inviting presence that seemed to promise understanding and connection, beyond anything he had ever experienced. "Why are you asking me this now?" David said. "After everything that happened tonight, because of what happened tonight," Lyra replied. "My people's reaction showed me that we cannot continue as we are. Either we must commit fully to each other, or we must accept that our worlds are too different to bridge." David stood up and began pacing the room. His mind was spinning with the weight of the decision. Accept the crystal, and he would gain an incredible connection with Lyra, but lose his humanity. Refuse it, and he will lose her forever. What would happen to us here, on your world? If we bond with the crystal, it will create a new kind of telepathic signature that my people have never seen before. Some will fear it, but others will be curious. It might be the beginning of true understanding between our species." Lyra's skin flickered with uncertainty. "Or it might make us outcasts. And you're willing to risk that?" I am willing to risk everything for you, Lyra said simply. The question is, are you willing to risk everything for me? David stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. This amazing being who had traveled across the galaxy to meet his people, who had brought him to her world despite the obvious risks, who was now offering to share her very soul with him. Through their existing connection, he could feel her emotions. Love, yes, but also fear, hope, and a deep longing for true understanding. She wasn't just offering him the crystal. She was offering him a chance to become part of something larger than himself. If I accept this, David said slowly, there's no going back. No, Lyra agreed. No going back. David walked over to her and looked down at the crystal. It was beautiful, pulsing with warm light that seemed to call to something deep inside him. He thought about his life on Earth, his job, his friends, his routine. Then he thought about the wonder he had experienced on this world, the connection he shared with Lyra, and the possibility of being part of something unprecedented. Will it hurt? He asked. No, Lyra said softly. It will feel like coming home. David took a deep breath and reached out his hand. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, the world exploded into light and sensation. He felt Lyra's consciousness flowing into his mind, while his own thoughts and emotions poured into hers. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying. All at once, he could feel her memories, her dreams, her deepest fears and greatest hopes. And she could feel his love for her, his wonder at her world, his willingness to sacrifice everything for their connection. The crystal dissolved between their hands, its energy flowing into both of them. David felt his mind expanding, becoming something new and different. His human thoughts were still there, but now they were joined by something else, a deeper awareness, a connection to the living world around him. When the light faded, David looked at Lyra with new eyes. He could see her emotions as colors dancing beneath her skin. He could feel her heartbeat as if it were his own. And for the first time, he could sense the life force of the crystal city. Around them, the gentle consciousness of the buildings, the singing thoughts of the plants in the garden. How do you feel? Lyra asked, her voice now carrying both spoken words and mental undertones. David smiled, and his answer came not just through his voice, but through their new shared consciousness. I feel like I'm finally where I belong. Outside their window, the crystal city began to pulse with a new rhythm, a harmony that blended human intensity with ethereal grace. Their bond had created something unprecedented, and the world around them was already beginning to respond. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, David and Lyra had become something that had never existed before, a bridge between two worlds, united in love and understanding. David woke up feeling different. The resonance crystal had changed him in ways he was still discovering. Through his new connection with Lyra, he could sense her emotions even while she slept beside him. More surprisingly, he could feel the gentle consciousness of the crystal house around them, and even the distant thoughts of other Ethereans in the city. But something was wrong. The house felt confused. Its usual warm glow was flickering, and the walls seemed to pulse with an irregular rhythm. Lyra stirred beside him, her skin shifting from the deep blue of sleep to a concerned purple. Do you feel that? She asked through their mental link. The house feels sick, David replied, both speaking and thinking his response. They got up and walked to the main chamber of the family compound. What they found there shocked them both. Elder Velter and Harmony Keeper Lyra were sitting in meditation pose, but their usual serene expressions were replaced by looks of strain and confusion. Mother, father, what is happening? Lyra asked aloud. Elder Velter opened his eyes, and David was startled to see them flickering between different colors rapidly. We have been trying to meditate since dawn, but we cannot find our usual harmony. Something is interfering with our mental connections. It started shortly after midnight, Lyra added, her voice tight with worry. All across the city, Ethereans are reporting the same problem. Our telepathic abilities are being disrupted by some kind of new energy. David felt a cold nut form in his stomach. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. Is it because of what Lyra and I did? The crystal bonding? The two elder Ethereans looked at each other with growing understanding and concern. "Show us," Elder Velter said simply. Lyra took David's hand, and together they opened their shared consciousness to her parents. The moment they did, the room filled with a new kind of energy. It was different from normal Etherean telepathy, warmer, more intense, and somehow more alive. To David's surprise, instead of feeling disturbed, Lyra's expression grew wonder-filled. "This is extraordinary," she whispered. "I can feel your human emotions, David, but they are not overwhelming. They are beautiful. The energy signature is completely new." Elder Velter added, his scientific curiosity overcoming his initial concern. "It is as if you have created a bridge between two different types of consciousness." Over the next few days, news of their bonding spread throughout the city. The reaction was mixed. Some Ethereans, like Kale, demanded that David be removed from the planet immediately. They blamed him for the disruption to their mental harmony. But others were curious. Dr. Tylen Merton, one of the most respected psychic researchers on Ethereal Prime, requested a meeting with David and Lyra. When they arrived at his laboratory, they found a tall, elderly Etherean with silver skin that sparkled with intellectual excitement. "Fascinating," he said, studying them with instruments that looked like musical crystals. "Your bonded consciousness is generating what I can only describe as bridge frequencies. You are not disrupting our telepathy, you are expanding it." "What do you mean?" David asked. "Watch," Dr. Merton said. He called over his assistant, a young Etherean named Zella, and asked her to attempt telepathic contact with David and Lyra. When Zella reached out with her mind, something amazing happened. Through the bridge of David and Lyra's bonded consciousness, she was able to experience human-style emotions while maintaining her Etherean mental abilities. "I can feel his memories," Zella gasped, her skin brightening with excitement. "I can see Earth through his eyes, feel what it is like to experience privacy and individual thought. But I am still myself, still Etherean." Dr. Merton made detailed notes on his crystal recording devices. "This is unprecedented. Your bond is not contaminating our abilities, it is teaching us new ways to use them." Word of Dr. Merton's research reached the High Council of Ethereal Prime within a week. David and Lyra received a formal summons to appear before the planet's governing body. In the capital city of Resonance Prime, the journey to the capital was unlike anything David had experienced. The city was built around a massive crystal formation that reached toward the sky like a mountain, made of light. Every building, every pathway, every garden pulsed with the collective thoughts and emotions of millions of Ethereans. As they approached the council chamber, David felt overwhelmed by the mental energy surrounding them. Through his bond with Lyra, he could sense the curiosity, fear, hope, and confusion of the gathered Ethereans. The council itself was composed of 12 of the oldest and wisest Ethereans on the planet. They sat in a circle around a central crystal that amplified their telepathic abilities. When David and Lyra entered, the crystal flared with unusual colors. "We have studied Dr. Merton's reports," said the council leader, an ancient Etherean, whose skin seemed to contain entire galaxies of stars. "Your bonding has created effects that we do not fully understand. Some of our people fear these changes," added another council member. "They worry that contact with human consciousness will alter our species permanently. But others see opportunity," said a third. "The possibility of new understanding, new growth, new forms of harmony that we have never imagined." David felt Lyra squeeze his hand, lending him strength through their bond. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "We want to understand," the council leader replied. "We want to study this phenomenon you have created. And if it proves beneficial, we want to explore the possibility of deeper contact between our species." Over the following months, David and Lyra became the center of an unprecedented scientific and cultural study. Volunteers from across Ethereal Prime came to experience the bridge effect that their bonded consciousness created. The results were remarkable. Ethereans who connected with them gained new abilities, the capacity for individual thought and private emotion while maintaining their telepathic gifts. Some found the experience overwhelming, but many others embraced it as a form of evolution. Dr. Merton documented case after case of positive changes. The human capacity for intense individual emotion is not a weakness, he reported to the Council. When properly integrated with our collective consciousness, it creates a richer, more complete form of mental awareness. Meanwhile, David discovered that his own abilities were continuing to grow. He could now sense the emotions of Etherians throughout the city, and even communicate telepathically with some of them. But unlike pure Etherian telepathy, his human nature allowed him to maintain his individual identity within the collective awareness. 6 months after their bonding, the High Council made a historic decision. They established the Human Etherian Cultural Integration Program, with David and Lyra as its first co-directors. Your bond has shown us that our species can learn from each other without losing what makes us unique, the council leader announced. We invite other humans to come to our world, and we will send more of our people to Earth. The program's first initiative was to build a new kind of city, one designed for both humans and Etherians. The architecture would blend human engineering with Etherian biotechnology, creating spaces where both species could live and work together. David stood in the construction site of this new city, watching as human engineers worked alongside Etherian crystal growers. The buildings they were creating were unlike anything either species had built before. Structures that combined the practicality of human design with the living beauty of Etherian architecture. Are you happy? Lyra asked, joining him at the overlook. Even after all this time, her presence still made his heart race. David took her hand, feeling their bonded consciousness flow between them. Through their connection, he could sense not just her love for him, but her excitement about the future they were building together. I'm more than happy, he said. I'm home around them. The new city pulsed with the combined energy of two species learning to live in harmony. In the distance, the first human Etherian families were moving into their new homes, their children already showing signs of both telepathic abilities and individual consciousness. What had started as a simple cultural exchange had become something revolutionary. David had come to Ethereal Prime as a visitor, but he had become something much more important, a bridge between worlds, proof that love and understanding could overcome any difference. As the three moons rose over their new city, David and Lyra stood together. Their consciousness merged, their love creating ripples of harmony that spread throughout the crystal landscape. They had found something neither of their species had known they were missing, a connection that made them both more than they could ever be alone. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities neither human nor Etherian had ever imagined. And at the center of it all was their love, a force powerful enough to unite two worlds and create something entirely new.